want to use that as the... How can you do that? How can it see me so straight on in the...
What do you mean?
Oh, it's a great angle. Like,
Yeah, it just
perfect.
happened to work perfect. I did.
I know last time we really struggled with that.
I know. Well, it's a new phone too, I think. I
That's
had a
great.
different phone than last time. So yeah, look at, there we are. Hey everybody.
Yay!
Make sure it's on.
It says live.
Yeah. Somebody's watching. Good. It's
All right,
working.
so it means it's working.
Yes.
Perfect. Hopefully they can hear us okay.
Yes. We'll speak loud.
Yeah. So just to tell everybody who's tuning in live is my name is Lynda Adams. We are at the WLOB studio in Portland, Maine, and I am interviewing Seth today about his book, his awesome book that I've been reading, The Fight to Enlight. And he was gracious enough to also bring me not just the book, but tourmaline spring water too, which I love.
Oh my God.
So I've had Seth on the show before talking about tourmaline spring, and so when I saw that you had published a book, which I didn't even know you were writing, so
Yeah.
that was a shocker. I was glad to invite you back. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. As always, I love coming here. It's fun.
Thanks. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and record. So this is the live version. You're gonna see everything we're doing here in the studio. It breaks in between when we're talking, and if we're not communicating with you, it's because we're recording the show. That's
Yes,
why. All right.
exactly.
But we'll
And
check out.
This is going to be a professionally recorded show that will be released at a later date.
Yep, August 23rd. It will be on my show, Living Life with Lynda, WLOB, 11 o'clock, which is a Sunday. And then I also upload the recorded show onto my website, which is livinglifeshow.com. So,
But you guys are getting an insider's edition, first view of a pre-release.
That's
interview.
right. Yeah.
So,
And not
they
that
said
I
the
don't
sun is
allow
great.
everybody to do this.
I know, it's sure you don't.
I do not. So you are privileged. You're very special.
Thank you, God.
All right.
I feel special after the things I made it through.
Oh
my
my
God.
gosh. Yeah, you're not kidding. I haven't even made it through your whole book, and I'm like, wow. I'm surprised you're still here.
Yeah,
honestly.
me too.
You've been through a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna wing it here.
Yes.
And so again, introduce you. We're gonna take a couple breaks in between. I'll make a note of the time when we're gonna do that. And let me just make a note of the time now so I know what we've got for time. All right, so we will go until, so that clock up there will go to about 57, okay, just for your reference.
Okay.
Because I
I'll
know
probably just run this live the whole time.
Oh yeah, right, absolutely, yeah. But we'll just break for this for my producer Debbie Davis to produce the show and put in commercials. All right, so here we go. My guest today is Seth Leaf Pruzansky. Seth is the co-owner of Tourmaline Springs Sacred Living Water, as well as the co-owner of Living Nuts. He also is a newly published author of his autobiography, The Fight to Enlight, Initiation Through the Heart is the Only Way to Win, where he shares how he found healing and self-liberation after facing enlightening near-death experiences, severe childhood bullying, extreme opioid addiction, incarceration for a nonviolent marijuana crime, complete financial collapse, debilitating illness, and countless heartbreaks. Through his words, he helps us discover how we can overcome any challenge we may face by discovering our own inner strength and compassion for the world. Welcome, Seth, to Living Life with Lynda.
Thank you, Linda.
I should say welcome back.
Yes.
You've been here before talking about Tourmaline Spring.
Yeah.
And gosh, we connected so many years ago, and I just thank you for being in my life.
Oh, look, the feeling's mutual. We all bring to each other exactly what we need at whatever specific time, whether we realize it or not. You know?
Yeah, it's true. So I love your book. I've been reading it. I'm not fully through it, but it's amazing. And so thank you for the printed copy that you gave me today. I'm going to bring it to the beach with me. I don't bring my iPad to the beach, but I like to bring the physical hard copy book. So it just came out, the paperback, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just released that one. It was on Amazon initially,
Okay.
but I wanted to have a hard copy because people wanted signed copies, and
Yeah.
you know, like it's like you said, there's something different about holding a book in your hand and reading it compared to reading it on a computer.
It is. It's
Just a
very
different
different. I like to
experience.
write in it, highlight it. You know, it's my own little Bible, I call it.
Yes, yes, yeah.
So let's start talking about, you know, explain the title. That's the first thing that was like, what, the fight to Enlight? What's that all about?
It's funny. I'm super glad you actually mentioned that because a lot of people don't really say much about that, but it is inspired. I have a friend, and you probably remember if you got to this part in the book. I have a friend named Von Meter, Abbott Von Meter. In the early 60s, he was a Kennedy impressionist, and he made an album called The First Family. It sold 7.5 million copies in 1963. He broke all records. Nobody, even the Beatles, hadn't sold that many albums at that point. So he basically had this like total bipolar career where he became one of the most famous people in the world at that time for about a year, and then when Kennedy died, his career just ended. Like nobody wanted to even hear about Von Meter because people loved Kennedy so much, and just, you know, he sounded just like Kennedy, you know? So he went from the top to just nobody wanted to hear about it. It was just like, they said, like a ghost followed him everywhere. He was from Hollowell, Maine, originally. He moved, well, he's from Waterville, Maine, but he moved back to Maine, into Hollowell. And in my book where I wrote about it, you know, I was his neighbor. And we got to be really, really close friends. And we would joke and party and just have a good time and talk about everything, like in depth. And at one point, I just, you know, we're going off because he's a musician. He sings and dances, and he's a comedian, really funny comedian, you know, like that's his whole thing. And so I'm like trying to get down with him and match his funny skills and bringing out anything I could. And I'm like, I'm fighting to enlighten every day I am, fighting to enlighten every way I can. And he just loved it. He just goes, Space. He just stopped. He just called me Space. You gotta call a book that, or an album, you gotta use that someday. I'm like, okay, Ab, I'll do it. So that's the title.
That's the title.
Yeah, but I did
awesome.
shorten it because fighting to enlighten is what it normally was, but it didn't, like people were like, how do you spell it? How do you, so I kind of compromised a little bit with going with the fight to enlighten.
Yeah, awesome. What inspired you to write the book?
So believe it or not, the book was never intended to be put into the public. I wrote the book because I got arrested. I went to prison, and you know, I grew up in the woods of Maine, living off the land, communing with nature. Like, prison is not really my place,
Yeah.
you know? I don't think it's anybody's place. But for me, it was just the polar opposite of what I was used to. So I got in there, and I'm just like, oh my God, I've ruined my life, you know? And I'm like, you know, trying to hold it together, which is really hard to do, especially in the beginning, because you're facing your worst fears, essentially. You're facing, like, and not only that, but the amount of time, you know, I got a 5-year sentence, and I spent 3 years in there, and, you know, just starting out being like, oh my God, I'm gonna be here for, just to make it through a day takes everything you've got. And you're like, oh my God, weeks, months, years are gonna go by, and I'm gonna be in here. So I was devastated. But in that devastation, I'm like, all right, what can I do to get it together here? And so my first instinct, in addition to the meditation, which I couldn't do at first, but I got really into, was to write my entire life out onto paper, because I wanted to get all the trauma, I wanted to get all the things that I felt inside of me out of me. I wanted to put it on paper so I could look at it objectively and look for patterns that were holding me back, that were keeping me in a limited state of mind and perception. And sure enough, right away, boom, I started seeing all of these patterns that were causing me to perceive reality in such a narrow lens. And I was like, oh my God, like, I lived most of my entire life in a very boxed kind of perception, viewing things from a very limited viewpoint, that had I known I was doing that, I would have broken free from it. So I basically discovered that I was living in a mental and emotional prison for years, for decades, before I was physically incarcerated.
Yeah, and that was your awakening to all of that.
One of them.
One of them.
One of them. It was definitely a dark night of the soul,
Yeah.
rock bottom moment. One of many though. Like, and I'm not bragging. Like, I've been put through the ringer, like one thing after another, but all for a reason, all
Yes.
for purpose. And that's what my entire life journey has been about: is making peace with trials and tribulations and tragedy, and transmuting it into something that is liberating, that is mind-opening, that's heart-opening, that is going to make me and this world a better place to live.
Yeah, and when you shared with me when you came in the studio today that that you have found this peace, like with the book, that this is, this was meant to be, like this is what your purpose is. You were supposed to be writing this book and putting it out there and helping to change the world, right?
It's funny because when I wrote the book, like I said, it wasn't supposed to, it was 1,050 handwritten pages. I still have it. I have the original book. But, it was so personal. I mean, it's like the most personal thing ever. It was just for me to heal. But, I made a few friends in prison, and I let them read it, and people have plenty of time in there, So they wanted to read it, and they were like, "You got to publish this." And I'm like, "No." They're like, "No, you have to. This is going to save lives. It's going to reinvigorate lives that have lost their zest for living. It's going to help people with addiction." I mean, Everybody's saying all this stuff, and I'm like, I started thinking about it and coming to terms with, like, maybe, and I kind of mulled it over for a long time. But going through that experience, and what it was that actually brought me through that was embracing all of it as it was, and really turning the entire experience inward, taking responsibility for all of it as it appeared to be, and that even though I didn't like where I was, I recognized that it was a part of my perception that I hadn't made peace with. And so instead of resisting this quote-unquote terrible environment that I was in, I did the opposite. I began embracing it. And in doing that, I learned how to love my life, to love this life, to love all the men that were in there just bullying and fighting and screaming and yelling, the prison guards. But this love knows no separation. There is no us against them. And so the more I embraced this, the more I did this, the more I realized, like, this is all that actually matters. This is, and for me, this is what I am, this is what I'm here to do. And it became apparent, like, okay, I'm here to help people awaken to this part of themselves, because it's in everybody. Teach them or inspire them to figure out show them what the fundamentals are so they know what it is, and then inspire them to habitually cultivate habits of perception that are in direct alignment with it. And if somebody does that over and over and over, they eventually get out of this default mode network where we're always stuck in our head thinking the same thoughts of the past over and over, and your perception of reality becomes aligned with the electromagnetic energy that you actually are, that's causing your heart to beat. And in that is an expansion of your consciousness. It's an expansion of your own awareness. And you feel at peace. You feel things that you didn't know you were capable of feeling. But here's the beautiful part about it is the body produces these feelings when we get out of our own way.
Yeah.
When we choose to feel elevated feelings, when we choose to feel love, and we practice it, we make a habit out of it, the body starts to produce these feelings. And when that happens, you realize really quick that everything and anything is possible.
And we all need that, especially right now.
Especially right now.
Let's go back to the beginning and talk about, when you were growing up. From reading your book, it sounded like, people were trying to mold you into being someone you truly weren't. And talk about that in your relationship with your parents and what happened with all of that and the bullying and the things that you were subjected to.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll preface that with I love my mother and father. They're some of the closest people to me, and they have stuck with me through all of this. Even not understanding a lot of the deep things that I used to talk about, now they do. Now they're like, and in fact, they've revealed to me that they've always been way more in tune with it than they've opened up to me about.
Really?
Yes, because I scared them. I mean, they didn't know what to think. They were like, he's talking about things, he's experiencing things, he's wild, he's crazy, he's like, all these things, and I was their kid, and so they didn't understand what was happening.
Yeah.
But I was feeling the evolutionary impulse of life as a young child and just going with it. I was in the flow, But the conditioning that I was subjected to is something that all of us are subjected to.
Yeah.
Every single person alive is being subjected to conditioning that limits our perception of self and reality to the degree that we come to accept it as normal. And when you have, say, 7 billion people all thinking and feeling and perceiving within very closed parameters, that creates an energetic frequency of normalcy, the appearance of normalcy, and that this is normal, and so, hey, this is the way to be. And to step out of that box or think out of that box immediately gets you pegged as the black sheep or something,
a weirdo
or this or that or whatever.
Yeah.
And we become so concerned with what others think about us. We want to fit in no matter what, and we sacrifice the most beautiful, powerful thing that we didn't even realize that we have. So, yes, I was conditioned, my parents were conditioned, their parents were conditioned, all of us were. But some of us are breaking through, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
We're born into this world not accustomed. We're not going to be a part of that program. We are going to break down the barriers that keep the human race enslaved in a prison of perception, and we're going to open hearts, we're going to open minds, and we're going to get people to really perceive the possibilities that exist within all of us, because that's what we are.
Yeah. The bullying part of it, I know that children today struggle with that immensely.
Yeah.
And it's just because someone stands out to be a little different than others, that they're subjected to the torture of being made fun of. And I mean, you were subjected to pretty severe bullying. Yeah. And how were you able to get through all of that?
Drugs. Yeah. I didn't, at the time, I think it was before bullying became a big deal and schools started to address it more readily. And, I kept telling everybody around me, like, I'm getting hurt, like really badly, and it keeps happening. And nobody really did anything about it. I wrote in the school newspaper the letter to the editor, like, about the school and how much I was being bullied, and, I was really trying to do everything that I could to make it known that this was happening, and it was messing me up. Like, it was causing tremendous trauma to me as a young kid. And even my parents, who came from New York City, they're like, oh, you just gotta be tough, like, it's okay, like, you can do it. But one day an incident happened at the park where I was just, all these kids came over and started like kicking the spokes of my bike and just like spitting on me. And my father happened to be there, and he watched the whole thing happen, and he just jumped onto his feet and ran over and started screaming and chased everybody off. And he started crying because he felt so bad. He's like, I'm sorry, you've been telling me that this is an issue, and I just didn't realize that this was so ongoing and it was such a problem. And so at that point, he got involved you know, both my parents tried to get involved and they tried to help, but not a lot could be done. Like, the school's like, oh yeah, don't worry, we're gonna address it, but it just, nothing happened.
Wow.
You know.
So then you turn to the agents that would numb some of that and help you to get through it. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk more about that and also your near-death experiences, because you've had more than one.
Yes.
Okay, we'll be right back with more with Seth Leaf Pruzansky. All right, I have paused it. Hello, everybody. Anybody watching live?
Facebook world, we've got people here watching. I can see.
Yep.
Melanie, you know Melanie.
Do I know Melanie?
I think so. I think you know her. Yeah, there's a bunch of people watching.
Cool. Well, hello everybody. Just in case you've tuned in, my name is Lynda Adams, and this is obviously Seth Leaf Pruzansky, the author of The Fight to Enlight, and we are live in the studio at WLOB in Portland, Maine, and I'm interviewing Seth for my Living Life with Lynda show, which will air on Sunday, August 23rd at 11 a.m., and as you can tell, we're talking about his book. So we're just on a quick break so my producer can throw in some commercials in there and we're going to come right back. So just make a note of the time here. Oh, right at 12 o'clock. Perfect.
This is science, huh?
It is. And I'm not good with math, so I'm just saying. Out of everything that I do, this is probably the hardest thing I do is keeping track of the time. So if that's the worst I have it, I'm good, right?
That's great.
All right. All right, so we're going to go to about 12:15, and we'll take another quick little break. Welcome back to Living Life with Lynda. I'm your host, Lynda Adams, coming to you on News Talk WLOB 100.5 FM and streaming online at WLOBradio.com. And with me today is Seth Leaf Pruzansky. He is the author of The Fight to Enlight, Initiation Through the Heart is the Only Way to Win. And we've been talking about, all kinds of things. But lately we were just talking about bullying and how you turn to drugs to numb that. And talk more about that. Like Damien is a huge part of the book, okay? And he kind of came into your life when you were starting to experiment with drugs. And talk about that period of your life.
So the drugs were the only thing that I could find because I didn't have the tools that I ended up acquiring of knowing how to create heart-brain coherence, knowing how to move my body in specific ways to trigger ASMR, which is like an autonomic sensory meridian response. There's ways to literally create and move energy in the body that when you know how to harness it and facilitate it, you can heal very quickly and you can create magic in your being, you know, in and around you. I didn't have those tools back then. So drugs were great. Marijuana, I started out, and by no means do I believe that marijuana is a gateway drug. I think it can be for certain people, you know, but I think in many cases it's actually a gateway off of hard drugs when used correctly. But at the time for me, it started with marijuana, but it wasn't enough. You know, it was great, I got the most out of it, but I was like, okay, what's next? What's next? Because at the end of it all, I could escape momentarily and get out of it, but then when I would come back, the pain was still there. The trauma was still there. So it was like, okay, what's next? Psychedelics were next. And oh my God, the first time I started tripping like that, and you know, it was like, oh my God, just like everything I always knew was real and a possibility was being shown to me, but in little tiny windows. But it was only while I was on the drug, and the effects didn't last. They didn't stay after. But still, I was like, let's see what this has got, you know? So I did massive, heroic doses of psychedelics, just trying to figure out, like, what this life is for. Why am I alive? Why are you alive? Why is this happening? What is the purpose of this? Because when you feel trauma, you feel like that can't be the purpose of this. There's got to be something greater. So But it was the same thing with the marijuana. Like, the psychedelics could only take me so far. Even though I was taking massive amounts and having full out-of-body experiences, it wasn't addressing the root cause of the trauma. And so I met Damien, and it was such an odd thing because actually my family knew his family when we were kids, and I knew of him, you know, when I was a kid, but I didn't actually like know him. But at that point in my life, I saw somebody that I knew was aware of something. I didn't know what it was, couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew he knew something that was not like anything that anybody else knew. And I just was like attracted to that. I was like, what is it? What is it? You know?
Yeah, and not only that, but I bet when it sounded like in the book that he stood out to you, like you stood out to other people.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
yeah.
so you were like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And he turned out to be quite the guy in your life.
He had a major influence. And it's, I mean, that in and of itself is a whole, it almost doesn't make sense to a lot of people. To me, it makes perfect sense because I lived every single bit of it. But he is somebody who, at that point in his life, had been through a lot and had consciously remembered all of it. And as a result of going through all this stuff, he had abilities. He could do things that most people, well, in fact, that everybody can do, but that none of us would ever think we could do because we're also stuck in this limited, narrow perception of who we think we are. And so we're cut off from all these dormant energy centers of our mind and body that, if and when activated, give us the ability to function at a capacity that is, the lines between reality and fantasy they just don't exist when we are what we truly are.
Yeah.
So.
Which are higher beings.
Yes.
Right? As they say, you know, we're here as the soul being, right? We just happen to be in a human body, in a human form. And
what is it? We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Exactly. Yeah. Wayne Dyer talks about that a lot. So talk about, you know, a couple of times in the books, I mean, you really go into detail. As a matter of fact, I was like, wow, these words that you're using in your book, and you really take us on that journey with you. It was pretty intense, I'm not going to lie. Near-death experiences. I had Reverend Peter Panagore on my show not long ago, and he talked about he died twice. And he talked about that and how different it was for him coming back. He almost didn't want to come back.
Yeah.
And having to live here on this earthly plane, knowing what's there and who you truly are is full love. Yeah. And talk about your near-death experiences and what they did to you.
See, that's the one thing that is so sobering, and it's such a reality check, because I've had so many near-death experiences that were caused by drugs, that were caused by car accidents, natural means, you could say. Lots of different things triggered these experiences. And no matter what it was that triggered it, you get to a certain point where it all becomes the same thing. And what I mean by that is, even though like it might be a heroin overdose, or it might be getting into a car accident and, you know, having an out-of-body experience, whatever it is that triggers the event, it eventually you go to the same place. You start to become part of the same thing, no matter how you get there. And every time that it happened, even though the circumstances that triggered it were different, the substance of what was actually happening was the same. And so in that, for me, okay, and this is my perception, and a lot of this stuff can be very hard to articulate, but not because we're talking about things that there aren't words for. We're talking about experiential aspects of reality that we, in our normal human senses, don't really actively consider on a normal, frequent basis. So we haven't expanded our perception enough to be able to almost create a language. However, those who have done that and have actively worked by considering the possibilities and experiencing the possibilities are able to tap into frequency that is giving us the ability to communicate these deeper messages in new ways that are deeply profound. So for me, it was very much like your life flashes before your eyes. Many lives flash before your eyes. Many, you don't even know if they're yours, because at some point everything is so connected and unified, you don't even know what's happening. But essentially, the universe is a perfect accounting system. Everything that has ever happened is literally held in a balance by a creative force that is so profound, that is so magnificent and so beautiful and so overwhelming that to think you're disconnected from it or to feel separated from it and then to confront it can be the most scary thing you never could imagine. You know, hence the idea of hell and all these things. For me, it was because I was living in such a state of trauma as a person, such a state of disconnect, such a state of fear, that to shed that fear, to let go of the pain and trauma, meant that I had to be initiated into these experiences that were going to show me the essence of what I really was. And in going through that, your pain goes away, your trauma goes away. It just does, because it's so profound and it's so overwhelming and it's so loving that it can't help but not go away. But the process of getting to it means, for me, and for others too, I had to face fears. All the fears that were mine, I felt like I was facing fears that were never even mine, that I'd never even considered. Like facing the collective fears of the human species itself and making peace with it. So as I face all this, and this is all happening at the level of soul. This isn't happening in my body. This isn't happening with my normal, quote unquote, normal conscious awareness. It's happening at a level that is it's all energy. It's happening at a level of pure energy. But there's a purging. It's a purgatory process where you're purging, you're facing all of these fears, you're facing all the parts of you that are incomplete or not whole and are holding you back. And through your willingness to continue moving forward in this process, because it is involuntary. Like once you get kicked out of your body, you could say, you're part of an involuntary process that's going on regardless if you like it or not. And this is my experience. This is what I experienced. And so the willingness to face and like we think getting bullied is traumatic, and it is, but the traumas and things that this presents to you are a whole other level. And so to face these things at this whole other level of being that you're in, there's also very much, as we resist things here, the soul wants to resist what is being thrown at it, what it's perceiving from that place, because it's like, holy shit, like it's scary beyond all scary. And so you want to resist it, but there's also something there embracing you, holding you, encouraging you, like, don't be afraid, like, trust it. Know that this might not be what you want, but it might be exactly what you need. And if you can trust it, if you can love it, if you can embrace it, which is what it was doing to me, because I'm going to break it.
Yeah, well, of course.
I apologize if I do. It's a very emotional thing.
Of
because
course it is.
It just so transformed my life.
Right.
To this day. You know, I was 18 years old when this particular thing that I'm telling you about happened. But it was like I had to face every single bit of everything that not only was I rejecting in my conditioned human senses, but I recognized from that place that as a soul I had rejected the very same things that were being presented to me indefinitely throughout countless lifetimes, and that it was all coming to the surface right here, right now, in this experience, and it wanted me to face it all. And of course you can imagine like how intense that is and how scary. And I'm just like, no, like this is not happening, like not happening, you know? But that other part of us that is grace, that is beauty, that loves us, that wants us to, I felt it there, just like, you can do this, you know? And so I kept facing it, and I just kept staying with it. And it literally burned away all the parts of me that were afraid. And all that was left was this one little thing that was everything. It was this pure, unadulterated consciousness, this unified field of conscious energy that is connected to all things great and small. And to experience yourself as that, and to feel what it's like to be enveloped by it, is the definition of heaven. Everybody, all my ancestors, all my relatives, everything that I ever needed to feel and know about who I was and what this life was about was all there. It was all there, and it was all clear, crystal clear. There was no questioning everything, because it's like, here it is, like, now you know. And whether you call them angels, whether, like, there's so much support, and I'm seeing all kinds of things coming out now as I start raising my frequency and getting into this. There's so much support that is always with us all the time, all of us, no matter who we are, no matter what we're doing. But because of the conditioning that we've all been subjected to, we have cut our perceptive faculties down so low that we're operating at a frequency that is very dense, and it's very cut off from the potential that we all truly are. And going through what I did, I had to sacrifice the part of myself that resisted it all, that was afraid of it all. And I had to like literally sacrifice it and let it go and let it be consumed by what I actually was. And whether you call that ego death, there's a million different things that people call it, but it's essentially leaving the old self behind and embracing the actual self of what we truly are. And when we can do that, and now I know, because of all these things and everything I've been through, this is something that people can be, if they understand the core fundamentals, they understand a few things, and they work actively at creating habits that reflect this type of stuff, they don't have to go through the pain and suffering and the intensity that I went through and that others went through. You know, we were doing work. Do you have to pause?
Keep going though, because we'll find a place to break it. Yeah.
Now things are changing so much. This massive collective wake-up call that we're experiencing with COVID is the same thing. It is not a collective thing. It's a personal thing. The universe, God, whatever you want to call this force that is animating our being and causing our hearts to beat, it is trying to get our attention because it wants us to know what we are. Because when we know that and we become empowered with that recognition, we will change this place so fast.
Yeah, it's true. All right, we're gonna take a break. That was a pretty heavy segment, I gotta tell you, but I love it. Oh my gosh, you're awesome. Okay, we're gonna take a break, come back, more with Seth Leaf Pruzansky. Whew! What'd you guys think of that? Holy moly! I'm like, I don't even know what to say at this point. I'm without words, which is very unusual. Anybody that knows me.
And it's just beginning. It's the thing,
yeah,
like, you know, like
it's amazing.
We are like it's time for us to embrace one another. Like we gotta get over the small stuff. We gotta stop getting hung up on, oh, you're you and I'm me, and this is like it's time to stop. We gotta learn to love ourselves and each other and put it into practice. Yeah,
I agree. So, all right, so let me figure out time again. Here we go with the math again. So we've done, let me calculate how much time we've done so far. Oh, I can just look at my recording. Hello. 34. Okay, that's good to know. This is when I miss my producer for being in the studio, because she used to do all this stuff, and then it was handed down to me. Alright, so we're going to have like maybe 10, 11 minutes maybe?
Left to the whole show?
Yes, unfortunately. Okay. Holy crap.
I know,
I should have done a two-parter.
Well, we can.
That's what I should have done, right?
Yeah. I mean, this goes into infinity, so we can do as many.
That's right. So I do want to get into, because you've already talked about drugs, and especially in Maine, we have this opioid addiction going on in crisis. If it's okay with you, I'd like to talk about how did you get beyond that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
How did you get through that, and what's different for you today? How, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's happened?
I'll condense it the best I can. There's so much.
Well, and I got a little time after, so if we don't finish it all in this recording, we could continue talking about it on a Facebook Live a little bit. We'll just have to find a place to stop the show. And I could probably continue, I've done this with other people where I continue the conversation off air, and then I'll say to people, go to my show. If you want to hear the full show, we continue recording after they go there. So it's probably, I got a feeling that's what's going to happen.
Okay.
What do you guys think? I think that's what's going to happen too. All right, here we go. Welcome back to Living Life with Lynda. I'm your host, Lynda Adams, coming to you on News Talk WLOB 100.5 FM and streaming online at WLOBradio.com. And with me today is Seth Leaf Pruzansky. We've been talking about his newest book that's out, the only book, right, that you've ever done?
It's my first one. I have a bunch of others,
oh, you do?
but this is the first.
I have no doubt. The Fight to Enlight, Initiation Through the Heart is the Only Way to Win. And I've got to tell you, I've been reading the book. I'm not finished with it yet, but I'm blown away, honestly. And I know you. I kind of thought I knew you already. I didn't really know you. Mm-hmm. Reading the book, I know you. Yeah. And I've always been impressed with you anyway, and just your spirit and your soul. Oh, you make me emotional just being around you. So thank you for being here and talking with us. And, before we went to break, you were talking about COVID and how it's changed, and, if we could all come together, right, and stop judging. I think judgment is a huge thing that we all face today, especially with social media. People do the comparison. I talk about that on my show, that, comparing yourself to others is an ultimate evil. And who should you be? You shouldn't be other people. You should be who you truly are, who you're meant to be here. Some of the things that you've talked about so far is, you mentioned about turning to drugs. Yeah. So you had this near-death experience with your soul. Yeah. And what happened when you came back from those experiences? Did it drastically change your life, and all of a sudden you completely turned the corner and you're great? Or did you keep going through hell for a while and trying to find your path? And did you turn to drugs still?
So here's what's interesting is that one experience that we were just talking about that, I started getting emotional about, that happened to me when I was 18 years old.
Yeah. And
I was not, by all conscious means, I was not ready for that level of connection. I just didn't have, and my friend Damien, that was his role, he was like priming me for this, like behind the scenes, like even though I had no idea like what he was doing or what it was about, he knew what he was doing.
Well, let me ask you a question. I don't mean to interrupt, but had he been through the same thing?
This is a whole other episode. If I open up that door, we're gonna be going forever. Yes.
That's book 2.
He's well, I have 1,050 handwritten pages. Maybe I can.
Right.
The book is 3 times as long as this 340-page book.
Oh my gosh! Wow. All right, I'll let you keep
books,
going.
Okay. So essentially, that happened to me when I was 18. I was not prepared at that point in my life to live with that level of connection. I mean, anywhere, and this is a while ago. This is quite a long time ago. And there's in northern woods, in the woods of Maine. And so I would come out of the woods. I knew all of my gifts were turned on. all my psychic, clairsentient, clairaudient, all of that stuff, like,
Wow.
turned up to 11. I couldn't go around people without knowing the entire karmic life cycle of their entire being. And I couldn't help but just try to work through it with them on the spot. Like, I had no control. I would just start. And needless to say, this was very disturbing to a lot of people. And they didn't know how to deal with it. They didn't want to deal with it. They were like, you are crazy. This is, what is, like, stop.
Judging you.
They're afraid, because
They're afraid, yeah.
what I would try to tell them is like, look, it's only scary at first. You just, when you're confronting all of the things that you have been burying deep inside of yourself, there's a cleansing process that occurs in order for you to move beyond that. But people didn't want to hear it back then. It just, so I was getting nothing but negativity, you know, like, you're a witch, you're Satan, you're like, I heard all of it. All,
Yeah,
like,
you're obsessed.
Yeah, you're doing
crazy.
all these, like, this is, like, you can't do this in the world's not like this. And so all these gifts that I had at the time began, because see, it's just so interesting. No matter how enlightened or how aware you become, it makes no difference at all, because staying that way is an entirely other process, which is what it's really all about. But I literally knew that to live in that state of being required me to live with such a high degree of integrity. And I was 18 years old. And I was like, you know what? Like, people don't want to hear this. They don't want to feel it. They think that I'm a witch. They think that all, like, you know, and I'm a kid. I'm 18. And the ego starts to come in. Doesn't matter how aware you are, the ego comes in. And I started being like, you know, at first I thought I was a prophet, like, here to save the world. Like, that's literally what I thought, you know. But then, you know, all these beings and everything, they temper that. They quiet it down. They're like, and you're like, oh my God, sorry for even thinking that. Like, it's just old remnants of the ego coming up. So, essentially, I was not ready. I didn't feel that I was ready to live with the type of integrity and responsibility that being in such a highly illuminated state required. And so, instead of feeling empowered and perpetuating and sustaining a state of self-empowerment, I started to feel kind of like a victim. Kind of felt like, why did this happen? What good is being aware of all this stuff if people don't want to hear it? And they want to do the opposite. They want to, like, smother it. You know, when it all happened, I was so sure that the world was ready to wake up and feel this and know it and put it all behind. Like, I was so sure. I like, literally saw the whole world become transformed by this energy. And I was just, like, the most beautiful thing ever, you know? But at that point, and Damien, it's interesting, his response to me, because he's been through it all. He's witnessed all this a million lifetimes before, you know, and watched all this and was just like, you know, like kids, you know, like that kind of attitude, you know. But I didn't know how to live in that state at that time. And I knew it was too late, because I had gone so far that I knew that there was no turning back. So I felt stuck, and I found heroin. And none of the drugs could do any, like, all the other drugs had no effect. All those abilities, all that awareness was always there. But heroin was the first thing that I found that it took the edge off. I mean, it didn't make all that stuff go away, but it wasn't at the forefront of my awareness. I wasn't focused on it. And doing it was the first time that I felt like, oh my God, okay, I can be in this world.
Yeah.
Now, what happened from there was nothing short of tragic. You know, I became severely addicted to it, along with many other beautiful people. I watched my closest friends die. You know, just horror show after horror show after, like, such a tragedy. This is before the opioid epidemic. And it was so devastating, but still I just wasn't, you know, every time I would try to stop, I couldn't stop. It was just, you know, I wasn't going to get on methadone or any, like, that was what they had back then. I knew not to do any of that stuff. And plus, I'm out in the woods in Maine. I would go to the city to get my drugs and then go back to the woods to do it. But it got to a point where I had overdosed, and I'll try to condense it here. I had overdosed so many times that I knew that if I kept going, I was gonna die. I was having severe vertigo. I was having a lot of my body was destroying my body. And I made a decision. I decided, I was like, I want to live more than I want to die. And if it means that I have to live with the integrity that I've been ignoring and avoiding as a result of waking up to this aspect of my soul's intention for incarnating in the first place, I was like, I'm gonna do it. And I made a pact with, you know, because all these beings and all these energy, like, it's always there. It's always there. It doesn't go away. It's just when we're stuck in a state of density, we just don't see it. We're just not as aware of it. But the more we allow ourselves to get into that state of being where we're not who we think we are, and we are this energy that's animating us, then these beings and everything, it starts coming into focus. You know, just because it looks like there's nothing in the air doesn't mean that there's not anything there.
Right. There's
something everywhere. Like, this whole entire quantum field is rich in information. So I decided that I was going to kick, and I did. I kicked. I stopped. You know, I did it once before, and I ended up relapsing again. But so the second time, I was like, I'm going to stop, and that's going to be it. And I did. I stopped. I kicked, and I never did it again.
Wow. Did you stop on your own?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Like,
that's like unheard of.
It was so brutal.
Yeah,
so brutal. I mean, the withdrawal symptoms, I mean, like, it's definitely, I mean, I'm so fortunate that I've never, like, had a limb ripped off of me or been skinned alive or anything like that, but it is mental, emotional, physical, spiritual torture and pain at a level that is incomprehensible. It's just, I had no idea. And when you're in the thick of going through that, the only thing that will make it stop is to do more of it. But then the cycle starts all over again. And so I was like, I'm not going to do that, you know? And I could feel this divine energy that I had, because it's always there, like I said. And I just kept, like, bringing my attention to it and bringing my awareness to it. And it was like, okay, I'm not going to just take you out of this. Like, you're going to feel what you did. I want you to feel that. So you always remember what you did. But I'm here, and I'm with you, and I'm going to be here when you're done. And it did. And it did. It brought me through it. And so after I stopped the drugs, the hard drugs, you know, I got onto a path of health. You know, I started eating a raw food diet. I just totally turned my life around in every way. But I still wasn't ready to live with the integrity that was required for me to really be in an active state where all of these gifts and things were just happening on their own. I wasn't ready. And so I watched these same ego patterns play out in all different ways, and they just kept playing out until I finally went to jail.
Wow.
I had to be literally, like, God, the universe,
caged.
spirit, whatever.
Caged.
It literally was like,
wow.
Okay, I'm going to extract you.
Yeah, you're not getting it. We're gonna really show you.
Yeah. Well, it was you're gonna show yourself.
Right.
But I'm gonna put you in a place where you're gonna sit in one place and you're gonna face who you are, what you are. You're gonna come to terms with all of this, whether you like it or not, because you wanted this to begin with. You chose all of this. I'm just holding you accountable for it because the universe is a perfect counting system, you know, like.
Yeah.
So anyway, I know that was a little off topic with what you were saying, but
Not at all. And boy, I don't want to end the show here. So what we're gonna do is, so we're gonna end the show for today for the Living Life with Lynda show. However, like I've done in the past with a couple of my guests that their story is so intriguing, I'm gonna continue the conversation with you for a while. Because I think it's really important to talk about what happened when you went to prison, when you got out, what your life is like today, because I want people to be inspired by that.
yes.
So tell us how people, first of all, can get your book.
So you can find it on Amazon.
Come up to the...
So you can find it on Amazon. It's The Fight to Enlight is the name of the book.
Let's start that over for Deb to edit in. So I'm going to start over. So tell us how to get your book.
Okay. So you can order the book directly through Amazon. It's called The Fight to Enlight. There's a Kindle version, and now there's a paperback version of it there. Or you can order it directly through me. People want signed copies, which is a funny thing for me. I'm like, isn't that egotistical? But I offer signed copies. You can get that directly through me on my blog, which is I'mAwakeNowWhat.com.
I love it. Okay. So we're going to end the show, but if you want to hear the full version as we continue the conversation, I'm going to invite you to go to my website, livinglifeshow.com, and view this.
Yeah.
Actually, you can view it. We're Facebook Living this as well.
Yeah,
So if you're
and
listening to this show and you actually want to see the Facebook Live version, you could go on to either my website, Successful Balance Living, Living Life Show,
your page. Yeah.
my page, and view it there, or with Seth as well.
Yeah.
And connect with him on Facebook. So.
And we'll keep this going too on Facebook
yeah.
for everybody who's watching. Like, we're just going to keep this going.
Yeah, and we're going to keep it going. And then again, want to hear the full version of the show, go over to my website. So thank you so much. We're going to end the show today. Thank you to everybody that's listening. And as always, I hope you're able to take away something from this episode that allows you to make some positive changes in your life. So thanks for tuning in. All right, so we'll stop that. That's perfect. All right, we're still alive though. Hello. All right, so I'm gonna stop that, and then we'll do another recording, so she knows what to do here.
Yes.
Where is this?
Sure, this is still.
And we could probably do like another 10 minutes. I have somebody coming in at 1, but
Yeah.
let's do like another 10-minute segment to wrap it up, right?
Okay.
I think it's a good segue to go into that, and then all right. So I saved that. Let me start it up again. Okay, welcome back to Living Life with Lynda. I'm your host, Lynda Adams, and if you're tuning into this, it's because you heard that we're going to continue the full segment with another 10-minute segment with Seth Leaf Pruzansky, the author of The Fight to Enlight, Initiation Through the Heart is the Only Way to Win. And we were on the air, but we were having such an enlightening conversation that I wanted to continue this because I could not stop the story there. I mean, come on, there's so much more to it. So when we braked at the actual show that ended, that aired live, we were talking about it was like the universe forced you to go to prison to really say hello. You know, this is, you need to really tune in and figure this out. So talk about how that happened. What happened that caused you to go to prison?
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about what happened while you were in prison, but then afterwards. So let's just talk about that.
So I was still involved. Like, I have a bunch of legitimate businesses that have sustained me, but I was still involved in selling marijuana on the side. And I was raised in a cannabis-friendly household. I was taught that hemp could save the world. Like, these belief systems were deeply ingrained in me. But once I got healthy and got clean and got off drugs, I didn't want to necessarily be a part of anything that promoted any kind of addiction, because it just wasn't in alignment with the type of energy that was healthy. That was what I truly represented. But I just stayed in it because the money was good. You know, I was making a lot of extra money on the side, and I just kept doing it. You know, it's like old habits can be hard to break, right? But I kept doing it knowing that I didn't need to be doing it, and that my heart and my soul wasn't really in it, so why should I keep doing it? but I kept doing it anyway. So I ended up, a friend of mine for 15 years who I knew and trusted, and he just completely, he got in trouble. He set me up. And that's why I got in so much trouble, is like they got me on video, audio, the whole thing, because like he just, I trusted him and he led me right into it. I just would have never thought he would do that, you know? But he did. He led me into this trap, you could say. But nothing is as it seems. Everything is the universe trying to teach us these greater lessons. But you know,
everything happens for a reason.
So this happened like that. He set me up. You know, then I had all kinds of agents running at me with their guns, and like I saw the whole thing happen.
Here in Maine, you were here in Maine,
yep,
Okay.
Yep. And just, my God, like, it's so surreal, and it's such an ego blow. Like, you think you're anything, to suddenly have your own government, like, enacting war on you, like, treating you like that, like, you wake up really quick to see that we're not really free. We've never been free. We're living under the illusion of freedom, believing that we're free, but at the end of the day, somebody can do whatever they want, whenever they want. And the only true freedom is at these levels of soul, which is where all this is leading to. But even the ones who are stuck, even the ones who are part of these systems, they're not free either. Like, it's not an us against them thing. It's none of that stuff. And the more we get beyond who we believe ourselves to be, the more we start to tap into the essence of what we truly are. And then that essence starts to work itself through us, and it just naturally heals everybody and everything. But we have to be active and willing co-participants in this process in order for it to unfold.
Yeah. So you said you were in prison for 3 years.
Yeah.
You got a 5-year sentence. You were in for 3. During your time there, you were talking about that's when you wrote your book. You didn't intend for it to become a book, but you put everything down on paper. Did you find that you started, I mean, obviously you start evolving and having awakening in prison. Did you start to have a positive impact on the people around you because of that?
Massive positive impact. So it looked like this. When I first got there, I was the biggest victim in the universe.
Yeah.
Literally, like,
poor Seth.
I was like, poor me. I mean, I was crying every day. You don't want to cry in prison.
No.
I was crying. I was
talking
like,
about bullying.
Yeah. Oh, I got bullied. I got sexually assaulted. I mean, all of it. All like a ton,
everything you hear about
everything.
prison.
Yeah. Like, but I have this ability to bounce back. I have this resilient soul that's just in me, and everything that I've been through, like, I get knocked off my feet, but I somehow always find my way back. And so here I am in here, and when you're in there, like I said, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to be here for years. It's just like, it's devastating. But I quickly was like, all right, get it together. Like, what can I do here? And I realized, like, wow, like, I have been living in a way that has been so out of alignment with what I truly know I am. And knowing that I've been living out of alignment with it, I've been saying the few years before that, I'm like, God, if I could just have a time out, if I could just go to the Himalaya, this romanticized, idealized notion of going to a cave and meditating. I was literally saying this. I'm like, if I could just have time out of this crazy life that I'm living, I will own this. I will get it. Like, I was literally saying this stuff.
So that's manifestation. I mean, it's law of the attraction.
I fully created that experience. And so as I'm in there realizing all that, then suddenly I'm like, whoa, right? I shifted suddenly I'm like, I need to take responsibility for my state of being, And even though I'm surrounded, it's like being in the concrete jungle, right? You're surrounded by animals, who want to attack you. But I'm like, what if I'm not afraid of them? What if I do the opposite? What if, like, I'm here to heal? What if, like, who would I have to be? How would I have to be to get through this and to make this into something that was empowering? And it's like, well, for one, I would have to stop being a victim. 2, I would have to make a decision that I did this. This is me. I would have to take full responsibility for how I was perceiving these circumstances. And then 3, I would have to choose to embrace this or love this or feel good about it. And then 4, repeat. Keep doing that over and over and over and over. And that's what I did. I just kept doing that over and over and over and over until suddenly the Seth that existed before, that was a victim and that was a whiny baby and crying and upset and hurt and like, all of a sudden that guy didn't have that much power anymore. And this new person, this new being started to come into being. And the new being was like, okay, there is this miraculous energy that is animating my physical being. It's causing my heart to beat. It's causing mind-blowing physiological reactions to happen faster than the speed of light all through my body. And when I start to bring my awareness in presence with that as it's happening, suddenly I'm not stuck in this belief of the past, that I'm this person of the past. And when I'm in that state, I am back into this augmented, expansive light body, this energetic body that I truly am, that I've always been, that we all are, that we are all always going to be, no matter how much we want to tell ourselves we're something else. We all are this. And at the moment of our death, we all find out right away that this is what it's always been about, yet we live our lives here all but oblivious to this for the most part.
Yeah.
But that's changing. That's changing now.
It is changing.
It's changing. People are waking up. They're realizing that they're not who they think they are. They're breaking patterns and habits of the past. They are bringing themselves present to this beautiful temple that is animated with the spark of the divine. And they are training themselves to perceive reality through the lens of that divine source that they actually are. So when I was in jail, I just started doing that, and it got to a place where I just started feeling so incredible. I was just so like, oh my God, like, you know, and you realize you just keep taking it to new levels and higher states of being, and you know, and all the people who were bullying me and the sexually harassing, all that stuff, it all stopped.
Wow.
And they all were like, they'd come up to me, they'd be like, what is it? Like, what is this? Like, what are you doing? You know, and I'd just be like, I'm not doing anything. Like, what you feel is just resonating with the part of me that I'm being. And all I'm being is just what I am. I'm not living in the past. You know, I'm not living in a fight or flight state where my stress hormones are so pumped through my body that I'm only focusing on this little narrow window that we're mostly all accustomed to looking through. I've let all that go. I'm just being the energy form that I actually am, and I love it. I'm allowing myself to be in love with it, and I'm just letting it filter down through all the parts of my being that are holding on to the trauma of the past. And so I just kept doing this over and over and being it, and it was just happening naturally. And all the people in there, you know, started feeling it. I mean, people that you would never think, but they weren't feeling it from me, they were just feeling it in themselves.
Yeah.
And
it's like you were allowing them to do that, right? By you not being who you truly were, you weren't allowing them to be who they truly were. And so by you releasing it, it allowed them to release it.
Just exemplifying, yeah, being like what we truly, like when we are what we truly are, and we're not ashamed or afraid to be it, like we give others permission to do and be the same. And you know, I had gotten to a point in there where I realized like I was put there to own this, to be this, to focus on this. And when I finally figured that out and got it, it was really like moving, really like deep. And then I'm giving talks in there, and I'm helping all these men because they wanted to know. They're like, what is this? Like, and so I just helped them recognize the part of themselves that they felt in relation to me. And not to me, but in relation to this frequency, because that's all it is.
Right.
It's just a frequency that's more closely attuned to the divine than we're used to living in. And it's a choice that we make to sustain it. Like I said, becoming enlightened is one step. Staying enlightened is countless steps. And it's steps that we have to take over and over and over and over until it becomes so habitually ingrained into our sense of self and our perception of reality that it becomes our second and first nature. Like I said, most people don't face this stuff till they die, but then it's too late. Then there's no way to process it. But when we face this stuff here now while we're alive, we have the ability to process it. We have the ability to transmute it. We have the ability to heal at a capacity that is so much greater than we could ever imagine. And in doing that, we are representing a new state of being that others feel within themselves, and it gives them permission to heal. And if enough of us are doing this, it's going to catch on, because awareness, consciousness, enlightenment is way more contagious than sickness and illness. Way more contagious, because the feeling of what it feels like to exist in these states is more beautiful, and it's more empowering, and it's like a dream. It's a dream that if you only knew was a reality, you would be living so different. You'd be like, so as a result of going through all that, I really solidified this in me during that time, but my work wasn't done.
Right.
Still wasn't there yet. It took a lot more. So I went through all that, and Tourmaline Spring came out of in there because I was in there. I'm like, all right, I want to create a structure when I get out of jail that reflects the natural purity that's inside of me, that's inside all of us, but that we all have access to if we drink from it. And so we do. We have this consciousness that's in us. It's always bubbling to the surface of our awareness, but it's only gonna cleanse us if we drink from it. And most of us just don't drink from it, So out of nowhere comes my friend with this perfect physical business model that represented that. So I was like, okay, this is a great starting point here, this is perfect to begin all this. And that's where Tourmaline Spring came out of.
So let me ask you, how long ago was it that you got out of prison? How long has it been?
The end of 2014.
I'm going to say that again because we can hear that on the mic.
Okay.
So how long ago was it that you had gotten out of prison?
I got out at the end of 2014.
Okay. So I had met you not long after that.
Yeah, right after. So, and I was in like the halfway house stuff or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Probation.
And you were involved with the Tourmaline Spring. That's when I met you.
You met me right after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
So fast forward to today, 2020.
Yeah.
What's going on with you?
I'm a completely different being. I mean, I've gotten to the point now where I'm mature enough to have chosen to take responsibility for the things that I didn't want to take responsibility for at the age of 18. I've renounced in many ways I've taken vows of like a monk in a way, you could say. Like, I don't have sex. I don't there's a lot of things that I don't do because the feeling of this energy inside of me is so profound, and it's so beautiful, and it's so empowering that I'm only interested in creating and connecting with others from this place. I'm not saying that I won't ever have a relationship again or anything like that, but we are divine beings. We are sacred beings, but we don't live like we are. And some of us are done with that, and we realize that we're done, not only done with that, but we're going to live as sacred beings. We're going to do what we need to do, whatever that is, even if it means sacrificing all creature comforts and pleasures forever. We will do whatever needs to be done to anchor in this greater frequency that wants to come through all of us. And
by doing that, you feel that it will have a greater impact on the world.
I know it will. I know it will. It's because there is no degree of separation.
Yeah.
You know, like even like you, like we're not actually separate. We just think we are. It's all this conditioning that has gone on for countless generations that causes us to perceive reality in a very narrow lens that we think is normal. But look, the system, like every system in our world today is crumbling or collapsing or being destroyed. The journalistic model, the healthcare model, the environmental model, like all the models around us are crumbling. But the real model that's crumbling is internal. It's the ego. It is the belief that we are a person separate from our true essence, what we are in space and time. That's what's crumbling. And that's where it's crumbling first. And it's crumbling because something new is coming to take its place. And what that new thing is that's coming to take its place is all of this divine energy that exists anyway, but with us as individuals choosing to usher it in through our being, through our senses, to raise our frequency, to live in accordance with it, because it already is everything. But it wants us to realize that we are also everything, and that we have the ability to co-create in alignment, in integrity with it, in a way that can come out into this world and change this world so that the world becomes sanctified. It becomes sacred. It becomes a holy place, but not in a, it doesn't have to look like, okay, we renounce everything. Like, I've had a hardcore extreme life. Many others have too. I believe that a lot of the hard work that a lot of us have done are so that many others don't have to do that. I believe that we've eased up a lot of things so that people can just get into this in a light-hearted, in a loving, in a softer way. It doesn't have to be these hardcore life or death things that I went through and that I wrote about in the book and experience. Like I said, there's just a few fundamental things that an individual has to willingly want to understand. And if they do, then they can begin to cultivate their own awareness of this divine presence within themselves. And the more they do this, like any habit, like anything that you practice, the better at it you get. And when this energy starts coming through, and you feel it, and you know it, and you rise in love with it, then you witness how things in the external world are happening as a result of the internal work you are doing. You're like, why would I ever go back to my old self again?
Final thought. I want to ask you, so how do people start on that path? What would you recommend?
So, really simply, let me try to, there's a formula, there's a way. One, you have to decide that you want to do it more than you want to be your old addicted self, because we're all addicted to ego. That's the root cause of addiction. It's not trauma and all. Those are just symptoms. The root cause of addiction is ego. We are addicted to the belief that we're a person separate in space and time. So you have to, one, choose that you are going to change with everything you got. And doesn't matter, you make mistakes, you go off course, we all do, but you've made a decision with such firm intensity that you're gonna get back on course even when you get knocked off. So that's number one, you make that decision. Two, you recognize, and I've been giving this analogy a lot lately, and I love it. It's so crude, but it's just works so well because people get it. okay, and this is part of two. Like when we have a sexual fantasy about somebody, right? Everybody knows what happens. Like you imagine like what it would be like to have sex with that person. And you think about it, like you get into this whole daydream and you're like, oh, what would it be like, and this and that. And we know what happens with men and women. The blood goes into our private parts and we get ready. It creates a physiological reaction. What people don't realize is that you can do the same thing in any part of your body. You know, like if you, like say you, like you go into your heart, you start having a daydream or a fantasy about how much you love yourself, how much you love this world, and you really get involved in the imaginative process and think of what it would be like and feel what it is until you're like actually experiencing it. The same thing happens. All that energy, all that blood goes into your heart enlarges, and it starts producing the chemicals that allow you to feel these elevated feelings that you're imagining into existence. Okay, so number 2 is that you choose to generate elevated feeling. You choose to generate feelings within you that are elevated. Okay, and number 3, do it again. Do it again.
Rinse and repeat.
Over and over and over and over and over until eventually, see, you get into a state, when you do those things that I talked about, you get into a state of heart-brain coherence where every organ in your body starts to become syncopated with the beat of your heart. And when you're in that state, you relax, you're calm, you're not stressed out, and your ability to imagine possibility starts to occur and arise naturally. And these are the states that require a little bit of practice to get into, but once you start to get into them, and once you practice them, they feel so good that you're like, why would I go back to my old self? And this is something that anybody can do, regardless of all the like really out there divine stuff that that we've been talking about. This is something that people can feel right away in their body, and if they commit to doing it, you're not going to want to go back.
Yeah. And really, I mean, ultimately, I like what you said, it's a choice.
Yeah.
We all make a choice every single day, every single moment of how we choose to live. And I preach that all the time on my show. Everything is a choice. So I just want to say thank you, Seth, for being here, writing the book. Again, The Fight to Enlight. Pick it up today. I don't care if you get it on a Kindle, hard copy, whatever it is. Pick it up and read it because it is life-changing. And I want to say thank you for changing so many lives.
Oh, thank you for having me on. As always, thank you for your support.
Yeah.
I love you. I love being here.
Yeah,
and
me too.
let's
Let's
get others realize that we can love each other. Like, put our indifferences aside, put our political beliefs aside, put all that fucking bullshit aside, and let's focus on what's real.
Yeah.
Our hearts are beating, people. Like, we are here. We are meant to love this experience. Let's start loving it, and let's share that, and let's lift each other up.
Absolutely. Love you. All right, that'll bring an end to this show. Thanks for tuning in, and tune in next week for our next guest. Awesome.